For as long as I can remember, I've been able to read minds. I still have no scientific explanation for this. As a young child, I thought it was normal to hear different voices in your head. In that simple way, kids accept what would be an uncomfortable reality to any adult. I truly believe these voices were all mine. When I told my parents, they brushed it off as a childish prank. I never mentioned it to them again. Once I turned 12, I knew something was wrong. I became increasingly concerned I had a tumor. When no physical issues were detected, I spoke secretly with my school counselor. She said that perhaps I process emotions differently or that I'm highly intuitive. I was relieved she didn't think I was schizophrenic. However, I continued to hear disembodied voices. By the time I was 15, I realized this couldn't be simple intuition. As impossible as it was, I came to accept that these voices were being broadcast from the minds of those around me. Most people think telepathy is super useful, that it would make life easier. The plain truth is it isn't helpful at all. In fact, it's mostly a real pain in my arse. Most days I resent it. Imagine knowing what everyone really thinks of you, whether or not they really enjoyed the food you spend all day cooking, whether or not they're slowly losing romantic interest in you, but are too polite to tell you. Also, if you're not careful, it can get you in a hell of a lot of trouble. Without going on and on about the details, what I've learned through years of experience is that using telepathy to meddle in other people's affairs, especially their love lives, is a recipe for disaster. I had originally lived near Blackpool, but my family moved up to Glasgow when I was 18. I applied to several universities to study chemistry and was fortunate to get accepted to the University of Edinburgh. I had never been there before and was happy and excited. My parents, both well-respected solicitors, were extremely busy most of the time, so I would have to make my way to Edinburgh on my own. When I hugged them goodbye, I remember hearing them both thinking about the cases they were working on. Their concern for me was fleeting. Typical. I took a domestic flight from Glasgow and landed in the afternoon. After 30 minutes of driving, my airport taxi turned left into Holyrood Park Road. I saw Arthur's Seat looming warm, inviting, and lush in the distance. Stark in the cloudless azure sky, Pollock Hall's lay nestled at its base. I pointed. "The gate's there on the right, cheers, mate." The taxi pulled into the gate and parked. I handed the taxi driver his money, and he replied, "Thanks, sir. Hope you enjoy the city." I got my bags, closed the taxi door, and walked towards the reception center. The next morning, much to my chagrin, I was invited to icebreaker-type gatherings with the other students, where we go around the room introducing ourselves. I did not enjoy them. Just a small glimpse inside each of their minds was enough to put me off getting to know any of them. It took me a few days to find my bearings. I loved the city more than the people that populated it. This place felt old and absolutely beautiful, so eternal and alive. The buildings stood like dark sentinels. Ancient streets crisscrossed in complex patterns, and the traffic was mayhem. I appreciated how hilly the city was. It wasn't flat and boring. I studied chemistry and had to attend lectures at King's Buildings. This part of the university was situated down near Cameron Toll. So every morning, too early for a young university student, I peeled myself out of bed, had a quick breakfast of Weetabix and milk, chugged a mug of tea, and raced off for my bus by the swimming pool on Dalkeith Road. One icy cold morning, I was pulling my scarf tighter around my neck when I noticed a student I had never seen before. He stood with his back to me. All I saw was his dark, shaggy hair and denim jacket with matching trousers. He was standing over by the pavement's edge. The 30 was about to arrive. I stepped a bit closer to form a queue. I was no more than a foot away from him. My brow furrowed. I couldn't hear his thoughts. When I focused on him, it felt like I was pressing on a sealed plastic bottle. Like I was forcing two magnets with like polarities together. Like his head was filled sawdust. I got a very odd feeling. Just then the bus arrived. We all paid our fare and shambled on. I felt really uncomfortable. I pulled on my large wool beanie to suppress my powers. I saw that empty-headed guy around a campus a few more times after that. I tried to distract myself with my studies. Late one Saturday afternoon, I left to go to the library at King's Buildings. I was walking down Minto Street when I saw a number 3 double-decker bus conveniently pull up. I jumped on quickly and paid my fare. As I turned to walk to a seat, I froze. In front of me stood the empty guy. I could tell immediately. He wore the same denim jacket. His eyes were steely and gray. He was not alone. This time he stood with a young woman. She was short and had shoulder-length platinum blonde hair. Her eyes sparkled like blue sapphires. They were holding bags full of groceries and textbooks. I figured they were on their way home after shopping. I sat down on the first empty seat I saw. The empty guy and his friend were standing at the front. I couldn't help it. I tried to read him. Again, it felt like I was squeezing an indestructible balloon. It felt pliable and elastic but unyielding. After a few minutes, my focus shifted to the friend. I realized that I'd also not heard her yet. I tried to read her. It was the same. It was like trying to hold water in your hands. As quickly as I got it, it slipped through my fingers. I tried again and again. Each time I got nothing. When I focused hard enough, their minds sounded like distant waterfalls. White noise, blank and empty. I shivered. I couldn't help but think of dolls and scarecrows. Those things that only appear alive. Facsimiles filled with stuffing. Puppets. My heart was racing. I felt a viscous fear bubble slowly in my blood. The empty couple stood before me. They smiled at each other. Every social cue performed perfectly. They looked so real. So like normal people. What could possibly explain this? I felt so confused. I never encountered anything like this. I needed to know who they were. I watched as my stop came and went. A vicious curiosity was born, and I simply had to know more about them. I sat on the bus and waited patiently. About 20 minutes went by, and we were quickly approaching Gilmerton. Finally, I saw them stop talking. They both pulled on their gloves. Slowly, I got up too, trying not to draw any attention to myself. The bus doors hissed open, and the couple exited. I stopped for a moment to thank the bus driver, then stepped out into the frigid afternoon air. The empty couple were walking swiftly down the street. I wrapped my scarf tighter around my neck as I followed them. The weather quickly turned awful. The wind howled and whipped my jacket. My long hair kept getting in my eyes. Ice-cold spatters of water rained down on me. I held my head down and continued forward. When the wind calmed, I raised my head. I saw the empty couple walk through a small iron gate and enter a large house on the corner of Gilmerton Road and Walter Scott Avenue. I looked up and down the street. The houses all around looked brightly lit and well-maintained. Suddenly, I felt very stupid. What the hell was I doing here? What did I expect to accomplish? Just walk on in and ask them why I couldn't read their minds? Ludicrous. Suddenly, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Hey, why are you following us?" I gasped and leapt from fright. I spun around to find the empty woman standing by the low stone wall. She'd snuck up behind me. "I am not following anyone," I stammered unconvincingly. Her blue eyes stared at me, hard and cold. I felt something pull at me. Pull at my eyes. Pull at something deep inside my mind. Suddenly, I could not control my own mouth. It opened of its own accord. It began to tell her everything. "My name is Jerry Straw. I followed you and the denim guy home because I can't." I strained as I fought against her pull. Amid the trance, I managed to pull my head away and break eye contact. I panicked. What the hell was that? Did you get in my brain? I looked back up at her. She was staring at me now with a horrible seriousness. She nodded slowly. "I need to make sure you're not dangerous." Just tell me why you were following us." My heart thumped hard in my chest. I've never met anyone. Like me, I mean, what I mean is that I can't read your mind. I can't read the denim guy's mind either. I had to know why. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head at my words. She stood still as stone, her head cocked with curiosity. "You're like us then?" I blinked stupidly. I asked. She gestured to the window. The door to the house was ajar. Inside I saw 4 other people. 1 girl and 3 guys. I could just make out their voices. Mind reading must be dead useful. We can all do useful things too. Special things. Like what? I asked. Wouldn't you like to know? Then she fixed me with an odd stare. It made me feel like a bug under a microscope. "You should come inside and meet us if you'd really like to know. We could use a mind reader." My heart was still pounding. I felt really uncomfortable. I never met anyone like this, like me in my life, and now out of nowhere, there are 5 of them. Could it be? I'm not sure, Dash, but before I could even finish, she had marched into the house calling loudly, "Hey everyone, found a telepathic creeper lurking in the garden." I felt my face flush red. I ran up the wooden stairs and through the open door. No, I wasn't. I just thought. I was trying to find out. I couldn't quite get the words out fast enough. I closed the door behind me. Inside, I found 5 people. The first was the short blonde girl who had psychically assaulted me. Next to her was a girl with brown hair and dark eyes. She fixed me with a warm grin. "Hey, I'm Eleanor. I see you've had the pleasure of meeting Lucy." I turned my attention quickly to the others who sat on the old sofas which surrounded a tiny TV set in a large living room. I couldn't read any of them. My heart thumped loudly. The house was warm but not in a good state. The wallpaper was peeling and there was hardly any furniture besides 2 sofas, a dining room table, and a few chairs. The floors were dusty and I could smell the distinct scent of unwashed laundry. The stairs to the upstairs looked old and creaky. My eyes glanced at the TV. A PS1 lay on the ground with many game covers spewed across the floor. I felt myself relax slightly. At least they like video games. Of course, the first guy I noticed was the denim jacket guy. He stared at me with intrigue. "I think I've seen you around." "Do you also go to classes at King's Buildings?" he said with a large grin. I nodded and replied, "Yeah, I've seen you around too." My eyes darted to Lucy. "It's how I first noticed you." Denim jacket guy leant forward slowly, his expression curious. "Noticed what exactly?" "Well, I suddenly felt unsure of myself. It wasn't usual for me to talk so openly about my telepathy. But I continued, "You can all do stuff too. Like psychic stuff." I realized then I was whispering. The tension immediately diffused as everyone burst into laughter. Now it was Eleanor who spoke. No need to whisper. "Yes, we can all do stuff like that." Her eyes narrowed with curiosity. "How did you figure that out?" My heart leapt. I kept my voice steady as I said, "Well, on the bus I noticed that if I tried to read his mind, all I got was static. That's never happened before. I just had to find out what was going on." I heard a grunt from Lucy. He didn't figure it out at all. I told him we were special like him. Eleanor frowned at Lucy. Way to keep a low profile. She looked back at me and continued, "But I think that makes sense. Our abilities work differently on people like us. Lucy's powers aren't as effective on us as regular people. And Desmond's too." Suddenly Denim Jacket stood up and held out his hand. "My name is Marcus, by the way." I shook his hand. He used his head to gesture to the 2 guys to his left. "Them over there are Desmond and Justin." "And you are?"